Crap.
This is Nacho from Impoverished Gearheads. Today we're going to be installing Skyjacker sway bar link disconnects on this 1990 Jeep Cherokee. So a little bit about what sway bars do. You know, if you've ever ridden a bicycle and you go to make a left turn, you lean into the left because the force on your body wants to take you to the right. So same thing with a car. When you turn left, the chassis of your vehicle, you know, that's suspended on springs, is going to want to lean to the right. So you really don't want that happening because that makes driving really miserable. So what a sway bar does is a sway bar keeps those two parts of your vehicle in relation. As you're driving and your car suspension, you know, moves up and down as you hit bumps and things like that in the road, it lets your axle and your chassis in relation to each other move up and down. But what you don't want is it necessarily moving, you know, like this when you're turning, especially. So the sway bar helps minimize that. Now, I've read on some forums, people say, oh, you really don't need sway bars on Jeeps. Maybe if you live in Kentucky or someplace like that, you know, you're driving an old, you know, 3-speed CJ or something like that, where you're not getting it up to highway speed, you know, you're riding on dirt roads, things like that. Or especially if it's, you know, an OHV only vehicle, yeah, that makes sense because really, sway bars are designed for people that are driving on the interstate. They're designed for when you're going 70 miles an hour and all of a sudden, you know, you got to steer around something really quick and you got to make, you know, some sort of like evasive turning. You're not flipping your vehicle over. So that's what a sway bar does. So then the question is, why do you want sway bar disconnects? So if you're watching this video, you probably have an idea of why you would have them, but it mainly is for when you want to go off-road and you want to have that full articulation where your axle can move independently of the chassis. So your back axle can kind of go one way with your vehicle and your front axle can go another way when you're on a very rough and twisty road. So I typically drive on just dirt roads, things like that. Every once in a while I get out to the desert though, where you know, we get to some areas that have been really washed out by water and you got to go over them. And a few times I've gotten my vehicle to where it really all the weight's only on one of the front wheels, and so what that ends up causing can be an issue where now you're putting tons of force on your sway bar and you're not letting your axle naturally go where it wants to go. And so that's one of the reasons why when you're driving slow in an OHV situation, you want to be able to disconnect your sway bar. And so sway bar disconnects allow you to do that. On the highway, boom, they're connected, your vehicle's going to be solid. When you go off-road, you can disconnect them, hey, and you have full articulation, full movement. It makes it a little easier to drive off-road. One of the things that the sway bar, or really anti-sway bar, helps do is it also helps eliminate, you know, the dreaded death wobble. So if you own a Jeep that's, you know, got 150,000 or 200,000 miles, or you bought a Jeep that's 20 years old, there's a good chance when you get up to highway speed, you experience what's known as death wobble, where basically you'll hit a bump, and then your whole vehicle will start to shake and kind of gyrate and feels like it's about to flip over on you and kill you, hence why it's called death wobble. The real way to get rid of death wobble is to go through all your control arms, all your linkage, everything that attaches, especially your front axle, you know, specifically, but also can be your rear axle, but everything that attaches your front axle to your vehicle. Everything that's between there, and there's like 40 or 50 things that all have joints that move and flex and let your vehicle, you know, twist and articulate the way it needs to keep you on the road and to ride smooth and all that kind of stuff. So, but all those joints, they're typically only designed to move one way. If it's supposed to move up and down, you don't want it moving left and right and things like that. Now, what happens when you have all these worn out parts, your control arms or some sort of thing that's only supposed to move one way is now going to start moving in a new direction. So that's one of the main reasons why you really need to go through all your control arms, your uppers, your lowers, and I've done all that so far. That's why I'm moving on to things like sway bar disconnects that are more of a performance and an optional thing than something that's really, really, really necessary for this vehicle, which is a daily driver for me. So I've gone through and replaced a lot of the linkage, a lot of the control arms, a lot of these components that wear out and tend to leave you with things like death wobble. So here's some of the other stuff I've done over the past few months. Replaced this pitman arm. This whole joint here, this is all new. This is all replaced because this was actually moving back and forth there, rather than this is really just supposed to rotate left and right and just allow this to move. Also, this track bar was completely shot, so replaced this whole link arm that basically keeps the axle. It's another thing that keeps the axle tied together. You can see the upper control arm back there. Replaced those bushings. They're all new neoprene ones. That replaced this bolt here. The previous owner just put a random SAE bolt he probably got at Home Depot in there. This is an actual metric, machine grade, you know, high quality automotive style bolt that I was able to get at my local hardware store. So that's actually the right size and it doesn't wiggle. This is the new lower control arms that Rocky Road Outfitters made. It's really nice tubular design. It actually fixes my pinion angle so it's at the right angle, so I'm not turning and putting weird force on my tires, making them go bald. So I highly recommend these. They're great value, and added a lot with the stability. You know, before it's I would be driving, if I'm say above posted or anywhere near there, and I hit a little bump in the highway, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what's going on? You know, I'd have to let off the gas, slow down, and kind of regain control. Now it's just like I just power on, feel the bump, but there's no shaking, there's no shimming, there's nothing that's gonna, you know, make me wreck or lose control of the vehicle. So it's kind of nice because I tend to drive this vehicle hard. I drive it like it's a sports car. I don't drive it like it's a 25-year-old truck with 200,000 miles on it. So but that's one of the things is you got to go through all your parts, make sure everything's the way it's supposed to be, make sure everything's tight. So here I'm unpacking the box these came in. These are going to be the links. These are the additional hardware we're going to need. There really are no instructions in this box, which is interesting. That should be pretty straightforward. So these are for XJs that have 3 to 4 inches of lift. Here are all the parts specifically for the link arms, disconnects. There's 2 of these on each side and 1 of these that connect it. Pins. And then this is all the additional hardware that's used because of the way the XJ links are originally designed, with the pin that goes up through the sway bar. Let's look at the original one. So here's the original sway bar link. As you can see, it kind of comes up, it curves inward, and then towards the top, this has been completely bent. You can see it's actually striking the spring there. The previous owner never changed these out, so honestly this sway bar should be much higher. See how this kind of comes across straight back? It should be coming up almost onto the side here. Longer ones were never put on. I'm sure this was taken off-roaded before I bought it. I've taken it off-roaded, so that's what the force has done. It's actually bent this bolt back. So these are a little different than what you'd see on a YJ. The pins come up through the sway bar, so a little different. So you'll see when I put the new disconnects together, they're gonna be different. Now, one thing I did about a week ago was I soaked both this top bolt and this bolt down here that needs to come out. Soak both of those with PB Blaster pretty good. Should make these a lot easier to remove. So these are probably the original components, that they haven't been off for 25 years. So you want to be careful when you're taking this stuff off. Don't just go at it with like an impact hammer, because you're likely just to snap these bolts off rather than taking them off. Try it with hand tools, maybe with an assist or a long breaker bar, some way just to move these off by hand, so you make sure you don't just snap them off using some sort of impact hammer. So let's go ahead and pop these off, and then I'll show you what that looks like. So it appears that this bolt is actually a 15 millimeter, and of course I don't have a 15 millimeter wrench to take that off, and because of where it is with the spring, I can't put a deep socket on there, and it's too long to fit a short socket on there. So I'm gonna have to get creative on how to get this taken off. Now, I know you might be thinking, why don't you just take this bottom one off first, and then I could just raise the entire arm up. The problem is I'm afraid of, once I get that disconnected from the axle, then this is just gonna spin around, and I'm gonna have a real time taking it off. So let me see if I can get creative or find another wrench that'll work. So here's what I decided to do. I'm gonna take a regular 5/8 wrench that you can see is way too big, but I'm gonna try just by hand to just move it and see if I can break this free. And yep, it's coming right off. Okay. Now normally I would say use the right size wrench for whatever you're doing, because you don't want to mess things up. But all I really needed to do is get these links off, because these things are now garbage. So Looks like this will work. I'll just do this by hand, and I'll come back to you when I get this thing off. Previous owner put these pucks in rather than put new springs in, so yeah, that gives you a 3-inch lift, but it doesn't actually give you more articulation. You still have the same amount of travel of the original springs, so these springs are going to go pretty soon too. Okay, this lower joint is 18 millimeter. There we go. Break that free. Telling you, PV Blaster. This is good stuff. You need to use it about a day before you're going to start working on stuff. Spray this in. Penetrating oil. It's good stuff. So you can see some of the damage that happened to this sway bar link. You can see how this thing's bent out of shape. And anyway, so here's the old one. I see them there. That's the old sway bar links. Here's the new one. So you can see they're a lot longer. The new ones. So, and then there's also, since these have the pin type, these have a little adapter thing that I'll show you in a minute. There's inserts for these, so I'm gonna put a little grease on these inserts. You can see how there's one there. The new ones come with inserts, so I'm gonna put just a little bit of grease, just because I kind of do that. Now, they probably don't need to be, but I'm just gonna grease these just in case to show them a little extra love. I usually do that when everything's sort of like metal and rubber. Just put some grease in there just to make sure it lives a longer life. Okay, so now I got these little inserts in. I'll put the rest of them together. These guys will go in the trash. So, oh, I did actually find the instructions for the assembly of these online, so they're pretty easy to find. So they're not that detailed. It's just because those are some safety things. But this is a pretty simple project. So the next thing I need to do is get the carrier things built for these, the top part that meets up with the sway bar. Okay, so here it is assembled. This is the whole bar and the whole link. And this piece will go up through right here, through the sway bar itself, and this creates then a pivot point right here. So no matter if you have a 3-inch or a 4-inch or 2.5-inch, wherever your lift is, this will leave plenty of travel. So let me throw it in there, and I'll let you see what it looks like once it's all installed. Okay, so here it is fully installed. This guy gets torqued down to 45 foot-pounds, this guy to 60, and there it is. So that's the new link, and this is closer. This is a little higher than it used to be when it was stock, but this is about the right angle, and since it has a little over, it just compensates right here because this is able to rotate now. So this is rigid attached here, and now this will rotate here, and then I go to the desert. All I need to do is pop this guy loose. I can disconnect them. I need to figure out a way to fasten this to hold this up, maybe a piece of Velcro or zip ties or something like that. But anyways, questions, comments, you think we did something wrong, you would do something better, different way, go ahead and comment below, and thanks for watching.
I hope there's no cops around here.